Hey, it's Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Thursday. It's April 21st. This will be our chart lesson for the day, and this will be our last one for the week. No chart lesson on Friday, but really good trading day today. It was all downhill for the most part. It got a little bit neutral early on, right after the open, but once we came back up and tested this trend line again, we had a break here, but it didn't matter. I mean, this thing just sold completely off. um, and it was all downhill. And it's relatively weak here as well. Um, I mean, you'd probably want to stay with this one. Really, since we had what looked like a break here, you really only needed to get a new low, and then you had to be a little bit concerned. But when this trend, you had another two-tiered channel on a shorter term, and it just continued to hold all the way down. There was even another second entry that would have been a great. And that's just right after the 2 o'clock. As weak as this thing was, you know, I'd even mark that one as well. Go ahead and mark it because it's a really good setup. So just a really good trading day all the way around. But that's after the 2 o'clock, so just keep that in mind. But generally don't mark anything after that or take any trades after that. But it was a weak day, um, and that trend line's holding all the way down through there strongly. Notice how even though we pushed through it, nothing would even close up there near it. So that's telling you that's a real good. See how the prices would push up to it, or it even push through it right there. But notice how nothing can even close at the line. That's telling you this thing is really weak. So you finally got to close right near the line there, and that's generally what you'll see, a close right inside the line, even though it might push through it. And we couldn't even close anywhere near it on these bars. So that's telling you something. It's telling you the market's really weak there. Let's back out, go back to the start of the day and talk about our trades. It was really flat here, so this was a little bit sideways, and all this is just you had a possible trend line up here. Early on I was looking at it really is more flat, and then I just kind of moved that down as we continue to work along here. But we pushed up and had this big bearish bar. Um, Once you got a break below, you're looking for prices to come back down and test these lows. And here's a clue that we may be going lower. There's actually we're making lower highs all the way down here, and we're making lower lows all the way down through here. And there's a leg up, a correction, and another measured leg up. So this was two measured legs up. This was really the first thing I saw really from 7 o'clock on. It was really kind of, there just weren't any good setups. You might have considered this long here, but it was really, it's such a big bar. You see it was right at 705, so and it's right into these matching highs. So I didn't like it. It was, I didn't want to jump on something so early, right in the out of the gate that might fail. Um, and you end up getting a great short here. It's a huge bar, so you probably wanted to let it break lower and use a limit order. Notice how it came right back and would have filled you a good ways up into this bar before it pushed lower again. I wouldn't add on or join in way down here because it's too close to these lows. Even though we are making lower lows, there's still some support across there. Hopefully you could see, I originally had this a little higher. Wondered if maybe we had some overshoots, but as we got a little more price action, it was pretty obvious that this was a midline here, and that it was a little more obvious what was going on, in other words. So, but yeah, this was a nice entry. Again, I'd probably use a limit order, and it would have come back and filled you, even if you didn't get filled on this bar, because this shot down pretty quickly. And then it pulls back, and you get a failed second entry long here. This one is real close to being green because it's near these lows. Okay, sorry, I had a little interruption there, but yeah, you got a failed second entry long here. Notice the new high, and this one again, this one's real close to being green because it's close to these lows, but you have enough room here. It's really close. I would try to maybe get an extra tick or so just in case it bounced and you do have the midline here, which you may not have quite had the midline yet. You might have had it down here like I originally did. And if you did, then, and you can see where it bounced right there. So I wasn't the only one looking at it like that early on. It was obviously other people were looking at it the same way. And if you saw it that we're looking at that, you see you would have more room. Um, so that's something to think about as well. So if you if you were looking at this as a range, you'd have to be really careful about that entry and make sure you had enough room to get out there. So anyway, we shoot lower, and notice what happens again. We get another failed second entry long here, um, but you probably wouldn't have had this trend line yet because you couldn't really even find it well off the bottom. So I was looking at this as a breakout pullback, but as a failed second entry long. This is basically a double top. So you count that as a new high, first entry, pullback, second entry, and it turns down. It's not a great signal bar, but if it's a failure and you're looking at it as a trap, which is how I was looking at it, and notice how everything's still below the EMA. I like that one. And you really didn't get another chance to enter. There's a shorter term trend line working down here, but you're coming off these lows, which I would have pulled this up by now, because you can see it off that close and those first couple of swings, and then it kind of drops. It's really an overshoot, maybe a little bit lower than that. And generally when you get an overshoot, you're going to get a break pretty soon, but this shows you how weak this was. But what we were doing is there's a larger two-tier channel. We were working to the other side, so prices are headed there. They kind of got ahead of themselves, and that's why when you start to stay away from that EMA a long time, you got to be really careful about going short without coming back to it, to the EMA and the trend line. And notice we get two legs back, so there's a nice second entry, a nice bearish bar. Again, this is a fairly large bar, and you got a lot of lows here, so I would probably let it break lower and try to get a little better entry with a limit order. It dropped on down. This was a fairly nice trade. Even if you use a stop, it worked, but I kind of like using a limit order there just because those lows are close. And then you definitely don't want to go short now because now it's obvious you kind of got a range here. And this is a failed break lower, and it does have this is a perfect measured move between the two, the midline, the upper trend line, the midline, and this is what we call the opposite side of the trend line is the trend channel line is what we call it. So this is like a failed break lower. It's also a bounce off. Only problem is you don't have a close outside this trend line here, and so it could be a little bit risky, but you figure it's coming back to the EMA and you got enough room there, so I liked it. And quick easy trade, and then you turn down right off the highs again. That's the first close outside, so you know you're going to try to get a new low, and it does. It shoots down there and then it bounces. And I like this one for a long. It actually was moving down and went out the other side, and it came back up and went before it went out this other side. It went out the low first, so I like going long right there, figuring you'll come back to the upper side, which is what happens. And you get a second entry right here on a failed break higher. It's not a very good signal bar, but it's a failed break out of this, and it is a second entry. And so I like that one. And again, it was a really quick, you can tell they trapped some people here by how bearish it was when it turned down and went out. And then we're just kind of going sideways. The only reason this one, there's actually notice you got a new low, you get a first entry, then a second entry, and then it breaks higher right there off that low. Well, this is not a very bullish bar. It's real close to those highs of that range. It's real close to the midline. But the same thing here, but when it turns lower again, you know they trapped a lot of shorts there because everybody's thinking short. And when it turns up and it goes out the bottom and turns, it goes right out the top after a trap and a little higher low than this last where the previous support was. That's almost worth risking to see if you catch one of those lows, just like this one. That's another reason I like this one, because you may catch the low of the day if we rallied out of here. And you can see that they caught a lot of people off guard But if you know what's going on, you know what prices are doing. They're headed back to the trend line, and look, they go to the tick and then turn down again. And so I like this one to risk it to try to get back up here. It's aggressive. That's why it's green, because it is going long into some resistance there. But if you understand what's going on, it's almost worth risking these sometimes. But you need to really understand what's going on or skip that trade. And then we come back here. We got a setup here. It never triggers, and then it breaks higher. We didn't quite have a new high, but look at this trend working up. We get the break. We didn't quite have a new high yet. It pushes to a new high and turns and goes straight down. You don't really go short below the green bar. You have to wait on the red one. And because it doesn't close on its low, I would have let it break lower and maybe use a limit order and try to get a tick or two better. Turns out to be a great trade. It wouldn't have mattered if you use a stop, but you don't know that at the time. Um, but you probably got some people trapped here, and a lot of these longs are probably going to all exit. Then it comes back and it turns down right off that trend line again. Just go short right there, and hopefully you get. Hopefully you're going to make a new low, but hopefully you at least get a measured leg like this one. So you're looking for prices to go to at least right in here, and you can see that's where a lot of people obviously started buying because it starts finding support right there, and turns down. I didn't like going short here. That's a big bearish bar, but it's right back into this support. Um, it's right into the EMA. There's several different reasons. It probably could be, I mean, you could even treat it like a failed second entry long after two legs down. So, I mean, I guess it probably should be at least green. With it being a trap, you might even consider taking it as just red, but I just hated to risk it right in there in the middle. You are looking for a new low, so there's reasons to consider it. So it's real close. I probably should have circled it to begin with, especially when it went out the top and turned and went out the bottom and was so bearish looking. And that is about as bearish as it gets right there. So, um, but then it bounces. Got a little trend working up. You get a break, two legs up, and where does it turn down? Right off those swings right there. You can see that. I actually tightened this later to more like that. Originally I had it a little higher, but it turns down right off of that. And look how bearish it is. And so you got your break, two legs up, right off that trend line, and we're still looking for a new low. Go short there. And then you get a failed second entry long right here. Pull back first entry, then there's a lower high. Even though it didn't go lower, it's still like a second entry, and it fails. And look how bearish it is again at the trend line. You may not have been able to get in that one because, I mean, they must have trapped a lot of people right here and food because um, notice how it gaps across there. And that's where that midline is. And you'll see that. Notice it did it on the closes. It really didn't do it here because your stem is up here. But I can show you that over and over and over how it does that. But this was a nice move down if you could catch it. And then you get another second entry here. I didn't like this one because we're just kind of going sideways. It's not a very good setup signal bar. That's definitely a neutral bar. But this thing's pretty weak, and we aren't to the low side yet. Even at that point, even if you had it here, we weren't there yet. I think it ends up being on down here when you measure it and get the measure move over. And that's the thing. This midline is always going to be an equal distance. If it's farther from here to here than it is from here to here, then you don't have it right. Something's wrong. It's always an equal distance kind of thing. So keep that in mind. But that one's iffy. But when it comes back here, when it actually comes back and gives it another test, that's a double top, and you get that one little. I don't have the line across there, but anyway, you can see the little failed break higher and it turns, and how bearish that is. Just go short there. Another great move down. And this one, I would have liked it better if it would have broke higher right there and then turned down. But you've really got a second entry short right here. There's new low, first entry, second entry off the EMA. And we're still not down to this low yet. But when it comes back up here and then turns straight back down again, that's a pretty good sign. And, you know, you got a little failed break higher there. This thing, the only reason this one is not green because it is a little bit, it's not a perfect setup. It's going sideways a good bit there. There's some reasons to be concerned about that one. Plus, there's no room to scalp out before you get to that low, and sometimes that will burn you. But the fact that we couldn't even get to get through the EML, couldn't even push through it, and we weren't down to this low end yet, and as bearish as this thing is, I liked it. Again, it could easily, it's real close to being green, but I'm going to leave it red just because the market's so bearish, and you know where we're probably headed. So then we get a bounce, first entry, second entry, and where does it turn down again? Right off this trend line that's been holding the whole way down. Go short there. You're a little ways away from the EMA, so even if we're going to go higher, it's probably going to pull back to it. But it pushes all the way back down again. Again, that's after 2 o'clock, so we talked about that earlier. I didn't have that marked originally, but it's a good setup. So, and that was what I saw today. Really good. I mean, it's a really weak day. I mean, we finally been around the 2100 a couple of days here, and now it's going to sell off, and it'll probably, you know, it's the way. What happens around these century marks is they're very emotional areas, and prices hang around there. It takes a while to push through them, and so we may be around this area for a while, going back and forth on each side before it decides what it wants to do. So, but that's going to be it for today. I'm going to wrap it up, and we'll be back again to do it Monday. So I hope everybody has a great trading day tomorrow if you trade, and a great weekend, and we'll see you again on Monday. This is Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.